Hi, my name is Ashton Richards. I'm a sales consultant here at Beath Consulting, and today I'm going to walk you through the first page of the event registration. The first step is going to be to go to Events in the admin menu and then under Event Registration. These options are going to be the same whether you're changing an existing event or creating a new event. To create a new event, we're going to start with Add New Event Registration here at the bottom. The first tab is General Options. Under here, you'll have the event name, which is where you'll input the name of the event. If you want to include a category for that event that's already been pre-established, you would just go ahead and select any of these that you've already created. The description would be the description of the event. The event begin date, this is going to be a required field. You'll have to put something here in order for the event to be able to be proceeded through. The event end date isn't necessary unless you have a multiple day event. Otherwise, it's just going to default to being a single day event. Registration cutoff is an optional field. You don't have to put anything here, but if you put in a date here, this would be the day at which the registration would be cut off. Otherwise, it'll stop allowing people to register the first day of a single day event or the last day of a multi-day event. The event start time, this is just going to be, you'll have to select which time of day the event is starting. Event end time, same thing, just this time it says the end time. Include vCalendar file and confirmation emails. This is the configuration option that we had to enable before that would allow for this to be showing up in a confirmation email. This basically is just saying that there's going to be a file included that anyone who's using Outlook, iCalendar, or Gmail would be able to add the file to their calendar. The registration available drop-down menu. There is available, which is available to be registered for as well as visible on the event listing. Disabled, so you won't see it available to be registered for. You won't see it on the event list. Hidden, available but hidden from general list, so you can register for this if you have the link. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to register for it. Coming soon, the event shown, but you can't register for it. Same thing with the registration, temporarily disabled, registration full, and registration closed. All of these, it's going to be visible on the event listing, but you will not be able to register for it. Under location information, the first option, location name, this is going to be where the event is located, such as a location venue, the address of the location, the city, state, zip code, country. For advanced event options, notification email address, then email 2 and 3. All three of these fields, any email that you put in here will be getting notified. They'll be getting an email notification whenever someone registers for the event. Include RSVP option and invitations for this event. This will allow for you to send out an invitation to people to RSVP for the event. If they do, in fact, RSVP, then if you go and send another invite later on, they will not be included within that email listing. The same thing if they decide that they do not want to go. If they say no to the RSVP, they also will not be receiving an email. Use forced login screen for this event instead of email lookup. This option here is showing up because the current member validation is email lookup. If you enable this, despite what you have enabled in the global configuration, there would be a login screen for this specific event instead of just using email lookup. The enable file uploads for event option. This will allow your attendees to upload a file during the registration process, and as the admin, you'll be able to go through later on and see whatever files were uploaded for the event. This is useful if you want to have them upload some kind of documentation or something like that before attending the event. Enable booth registration for event. This is another option that had to be enabled in the global configuration that we went over in a different video. If you enable this one, then this turns it into a booth registration event, meaning you'll have the booth editor option, and all of that will be covered in a different video. Contact person name lock. This is useful because what will happen is the primary person who does the registration, it will keep their first and last name no matter what. So if you're worried about someone going in and changing up who the primary contact was so that a non-member can get member registration rates, you can always use this option and that would prevent that situation from happening. Allow event contacts to return and edit their registration. This is something that will have to be turned on by contacting support for this option to show up, but when this is here, if you enable this option, then when your registrants get their confirmation email, there will also be a link included in that email so that they can return and edit their registration. Include QR code. In the confirmation email, if this is enabled, then there will also be a QR code included. This is useful if you're using QR codes to track attendance when people are showing up to the event, and for that you would want to use the mobile app. If you're not sure if you have that enabled, feel free to reach out to support and they will be more than willing to help you out in seeing if you have it enabled or seeing about getting it enabled for you. Pin to top. This option will pin the current event that you're creating here or editing to the top of the event list. It's useful if you want to say it's like a sponsored event or it's an important event, you can pin it to the top so everyone can see it. Hide non-member warning during registration. If you check this box, anyone who's a non-member, they're not going to see the warning verbiage for the package selection page where it just says that, hey, you're a non-member, you cannot select a member package. Autocopy event. This is useful if you're going to have, say, a board meeting each month at the same time. The first option is just which week of the month, and the second drop down is just going to be which day of the week. It'll copy all of the settings and everything for this event, and it'll just replicate it into a second event. Force descriptions to show. This one's just going to show the descriptions for drop down options. Ordinarily they're disabled, but if you enable this, then you're going to be able to see those descriptions. First additional mode. For this, if you enable this option, the initial attendee would have to select a non-zero package. So they'd have to select a package that costs something. And the additional attendees with them then would be required to select $0 packages. So this is useful if you want to have one person paying for everyone else, but you don't want the additional people to actually have to pay. Attendee limit for event. This is different than an option farther in, which is a restriction on the number of packages. This is a restriction on the total number of attendees for the event. If you put something in here, that specific number of individuals is how many are allowed to register for the event. Anyone past that would have to be put on a wait list if you have that option enabled, or they just wouldn't be able to attend otherwise. Attendees per transaction limit. Per transaction, you can set how many attendees would be allowed. Just keep in mind that if you do decide to enable this, the initial attendee is always the first. So if you want, say, 5 is your limit, it's the initial attendee and 4 additional attendees. Send daily email of abandoned incomplete registrations to notification email. If you enable this, the admin that you set up as the email for the notify up top that we went over before, they'll be getting an email about any incomplete registrations that had happened. Member-only registration. If you only want an event to be accessible by your members, you would have to enable this option. It would prevent any non-members from being able to register for the event at all. You could also do member-only packages, but that's something entirely different. Enable event admins. If you want to enable this option, then all that's going to happen is you can set up admins for this specific event. So you can just take any regular member, make them an event admin for this event, and then they'll have the same admin permissions that a full admin would for this specific event. Send confirmation email to all attendees. Ordinarily, the confirmation email is only sent to the primary attendee. If they bring any extra attendees with them, they don't get any of those emails. If you enable this option, however, then all of the attendees, including the primary, will be receiving emails. Prevent new members from joining during registration. If you have the global configuration option enabled where non-members can join as a part of registration, if you don't want it specifically for this event, you can just enable this option and it will prevent that from being a thing. Prevent members from registering multiple times. So for this goes back with the other option before about preventing people from getting member discounts or member prices for non-members. This can just be used to prevent someone from registering multiple times. So if a member goes and registers once, it will not allow that person to go and make another registration. Restrict registrants to or from specific states. There's a couple options here. So you can either do no restriction, only allow from specific states or provinces, or block from specific states or provinces. If you select either of these options, it then will allow you to go through and pick whichever states or provinces that you're putting these restrictions on. Prevent duplicate attendee emails. Checking this option will prevent attendees from entering duplicate emails during registration. So if there's already an email that's been entered, you cannot enter that same email again. Enable general public itinerary. If this option is enabled, then it will create a general public itinerary that can be accessed from the event landing page. The event fields need to be set up properly in order for this to function correctly, so you'd have to have different sessions or things like that in order for a itinerary to be readily available. Enable attendee portal. If you turn this on, this will allow attendees to log into the page using their attendee confirmation code that should be in their confirmation email. And you can use this to determine what would be seen within that portal. If you enable it, then you have attendee portal custom verbiage. This is going to allow for you to provide specific instructions if need be in that portal. Display personalized event itinerary within the portal. If someone went and registered for different sessions, then you can use this and it'll be able to differentiate between those different sessions. So each person will have their own distinctive itinerary instead of it being just a generalized thing. Display attendee list within portal. This would allow for attendees to see who else has registered for that event if you wanted to allow for them to see that. Display survey list within portal. This would allow for your attendees to see if there's any surveys that are readily available for the event that they've registered for. If you want to include another custom tab on the portal page, this field here would be where you would include that. Verbiage for custom tab on portal page, same thing as before. You can just include whatever verbiage in here if you want to add instructions. Member type for auto added prospects. There is a global configuration option where you can set up the registration to add non-members as prospects if you'd like to add them to a newsletter list or anything like that. If you do have that option enabled, then you'll get this drop down. You can just go through and select whichever member record type you'd prefer for them to end up having. Prospects is an option. Limit registrations per cross-reference group. If you're using cross-referencing, then this would limit the number of registrations that any specific group can have. This way, if everyone's kind of registering together, it can prevent things from getting too congested. Add link to additional registration. If you want a secondary event to be linked right after the first one that they're registering for here, you can just select another event that you have set up, and when they get to the end screen showing their confirmation email that they should be receiving, at the bottom of that page there will be a link that links them to whichever other event here that you've selected. Use alternate header footer for event. If you choose to enable this, then you can input a URL for an alternate header or footer here. You just need to make sure that it's a valid website file that can be used together. If you'd like to award certifications for attending the event, anyone who gets marked as an attendee would receive any of the certifications that you've already created. Invoice, discount, and payment options. Allow attendees to make partial credit card payments. By default, attendees need to pay for the full amount when using Authorize.net and a credit card. Enabling this option, however, will allow for partial payments to be able to be done, so you can finish paying at a later time. Alternate invoice return address. By default, all the event registration invoices are generated to have your organization name, your address, and all of that information. This field is useful if you want the information on a specific event to be different from your global standard or your invoice information. Suppress auto invoice sending. Enabling this option will make it so that when someone finishes registering for their event, they won't actually get an invoice sent to them automatically. The admin would have to go in later and actually send in the invoice themselves to that individual. Enable purchase order number. Checking this box will allow for people to pay by purchase order, and it will allow for them to enter the purchase order number. As an admin, you're allowed to do that as well. Attendees displayed per page on invoice. By default, the number is 8. So 8 attendees would be shown on one invoice. If you want to change that, you just change the number here. The default is 8, so if you either leave it blank, enter 0, or you use 8, all of those would be the same thing. Otherwise, you can enter a number here to change that. The surcharge option here is any value that's entered will be added to everyone's invoice, and it won't be subject to a discount. The description here also will allow for you to explain or add a description to what this surcharge is for. For payment method notes, at a certain point during registration, the attendee or registrant will be presented with a page where they can choose how they want to pay. As an admin, you're able to set that up in the global config settings. There are options where you can suppress different payment options by event. Anything added in this notes field will show up on that page. If you want to give specific information or instructions before they pay, this would be the place to add it. Payment by check instructions. This is going to be the same thing as the payment method notes. If you want to include extra information or extra instructions, this would be where you want to include it. The suppress payment options here. Anywhere that says suppress, so pay by check, pay online, by e-check, PayPal, or bill me, all of these are on by default. If you check any of these boxes, that option will no longer be available as a payment option for this event. Restrict non-members to online payment methods only. This is useful if you want to try to incentivize non-members to become a member, because then they can pay online as opposed to only paying at the event. If you decide you want to use discount codes, you would check this box here, which would also add another page when you're going through doing the event setup where you can create the discount code. The tax rate here can be set up outside of the event registration, and then you just select your pre-made tax rates that you've selected here. Suppress QuickBooks Sync. If you don't want this event to sync up with QuickBooks, then you would just select this option. The general ledger account. This would just be where you go and select which general ledger it is that you want this event to be tied to. The next option here is the require suppress fields. The first one is required title, so your prefixes, Mr., Mrs., Dr. This would require the title from both contacts and attendees, and that is the other thing here. So this first section is for the contacts, which is the primary individual doing the registration. The second section here is the event attendees, which are the extra people. So you can require position, organization address, country, suffix, primary phone, work phone, mobile phone. All of these options can be required if you check the box. Do not require the address fields if you do not want that, then you just check this box. These last options here, address block, country, organization, position, you can suppress those with these last 4 options for event contacts only. The second section here, event attendees, require attendee phone number, turn on and require attendee email address. If you want to use that option that we talked about earlier, where everyone will be receiving their own attendee confirmation email, you'll want to make sure you turn this on. Attendee address, country, and position, these are more of the require if you want them. Just check the box. Otherwise, the last 3 options here, attendee, country, organization, and position, you can suppress those specifically for this event if you select that box. The next tab is the logo options. So logo 1 and logo 2, if you already have the logo, you can go ahead and upload it here. Max file size is 2 megabytes. If you instead want to use a link, then you can go ahead and you can do the URL link in these fields here. The dynamic badge logo. If you are using dynamic badges, you can upload your badge logo here. If you're using a promotional image, then you can use the drop down here and you can select your promo image. The last section here is the verbiage and alternate labels section. So the first verbiage option here, this is for the public link page. This is where you will be able to alter what is shown on there. If you input whatever you want into this box, it would show up there on the public side. Member only verbiage. For this one, it's only going to show up for members after they've logged in. The add to calendar verbiage. Any text entered here will be included in the Outlook, the Google Calendar, or the iCalendar add to calendar functionality. Forced login verbiage. If you're using the forced login option, you can enter text here and this is what will be displayed, and this is only for this event. Contact information page. Anything you enter here, it'll take priority over global verbiage that you might have had added for this page. So this is going to be priority over anything globally because it's specific to this event. Discount code verbiage. Anything that you enter here will show up at the top of the discount code page when members are going through to register. So if you want to add instructions or something like that, or if you just want to tell them outright what your discount code is, this would be the place that you would include it. Attendee information page verbiage. Anything entered here, this will show up on the attendees information page, and once again, this will take priority over any global configuration that you have set up. The summary page verbiage. Anything entered here shows up on the summary page for the event. The event blurb, this will show up directly above the register button, so you can use this to add any extra information or instructions that you feel are necessary. Add additional confirmation page. For this, when they finish registering on the screen where they're going to the confirmation page, this is where anything you enter here would show up for this verbiage. Confirmation email additional verbiage. Anything added in here is going to show up in the confirmation email that gets sent to the individual. For all of these options here at the bottom, with the exception of this last one here, this alt title register for this event button, this only shows up one time, so whatever you enter in this field here will replace register for this event on that button. These other options here, attendee, package, registration, register, and discount code, anything that you enter in the corresponding field here will replace whatever is listed here everywhere during this event registration. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to support. Otherwise, thank you and have a great day.